Hello, everybody. Hopefully, you're doing well this Tuesday, and hopefully, you had a good Labor Day weekend for those of you that are in the United States celebrating that. I believe that's just a United States holiday. Um, Tonight, we are going to create some fun designs that I really thought were interesting and stuff. And we're also going to work on some fourth axis stuff like rolling pins, some kitchen accessories and all. And bear with me a second here. Let me pull up. I should have had all this stuff ready. Uh, let's see here. Let's see. Part. Mute. All right. Sorry, guys. I should have had all this stuff prepared. Let me see if I can get to. Oh, I can't find it now. All right. Well, anyway, I was watching a YouTube video and I saw these cool. It was a kitchen nightmares video, Gordon Ramsay, and I saw these when they redid the decorations for this one restaurant and everything. They had these really cool cutting boards um, hanging on uh, hanging on the wall, but they were chalkboards and they had the restaurant name and everything, and it looked really nice. And I thought, oh, you know what? That's easy to make, and that would be a cool little accessory. And I wanted to show you a picture of it, but I wasn't smart enough to, and it would take me too long to go back through all the hundreds of Kitchen Nightmare videos that I watched. But I forgot to save that and do like a screenshot of it to show you what it is. But we're gonna draw it up in here, and I'll give you, you'll get to see it as we go. Hopefully you enjoyed tonight's video. I had a viewer out of Australia, Sue, and she needed help with a cut. She had watched one of my rolling pin videos earlier on that I had made, and she was struggling with like a 2 rail sweep for the rolling pin video and everything. And so I jumped on Skype with her in Australia and walked her through the project and all. But she needs a little bit of a refresher, so she said, "Hey, could you talk about it in the class?" Because I watch your live videos, and I said, "Sure, yeah, we can do that." So we're gonna do some fun kitchen stuff. I'm gonna show you about working with vectors, working with nodes. We're gonna do some 2 rail sweeping. I'll show you a profile molding toolpath, not a profile toolpath, but a molding toolpath, and we're gonna talk about creating arrays and patterns. So it's not necessarily the project itself, it's the things that we're going to do to achieve what we want to, and I hope you enjoy that. All right, that was a long enough introduction. Let's go ahead and jump into, I think I'm on channel 2. Let's see here. There we go. And let's pop into here. And let's get me down at the bottom left side here. Very good. All right. As you can see, I already have a project kind of pulled up and everything to show you. And I want to talk to you about some different designs and patterns and things, because we do have the holidays coming up. With Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas, and these decorative type of rolling pins to create really nice embossed type pastries or cookies and things like that. For those of you that do have some type of rotary axis, I want to kind of show you a little bit of that. But I also want to talk to you about creative ways that when you're creating designs and you're looking for some type of maybe frame pattern or some background texture or something like that, some really neat ways to create some different elements for your signs and stuff as well. So it all is going to go hand in hand. We are going to have some rotary stuff, but we're going to talk about creating arrays of designs. We're going to talk about node editing and layout. And hopefully from this class, you'll pick up some useful information. You guys do well. And Russ, hopefully you have a good time at the Houston Woodworking Show. That's going to be cool for sure. All right, let's go ahead and let's get started. Now I'm using Aspire for this because I am going to be creating some models with the 2-rail sweeps. But when it comes to the layout of the vectors and all that stuff, we can create that in Desktop and Pro. And on our basic rolling pin profiles and designs, we can actually use the molding toolpath in Desktop and Pro, as well as Aspire, to create those rolling pins, designs as well. So the only tough part about the molding toolpath is if we wanted to do some kind of embossed design in the rolling pin, we would be V carving and all. We don't have really a model to project onto. We just have that toolpath and everything. So it would be a little bit difficult with that. So we will be using Aspire for some of these things. Hopefully you're all doing well. And let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is I'm going to come into my job setup here. And for this job, I am doing we're going to start off with the rolling pins. And I'm doing a rotary job that is 15 inches long, overall 15 inches. Now my rolling pin itself is going to be about 13 inches. I want a little extra meat on the ends for my live spur drive and live center. I don't want the bit getting too close to those, so I have some meat on the ends. But we're going to go 15 by 2 3/8. That's going to be the overall diameter of these 2 3/8. Now, I promised Sue that I was going to be talking in inches and millimeters and all. So we're roughly about 60 millimeters. It's actually 60.325 for 2 3/8, but roughly about 60 millimeters, is going to be the metric on that. And the length of it all, 381 millimeters. Okay. So now, many of you may or may not know that you do have some keyboard shortcuts and things where you can do metric conversions or inch conversions in the software, and I'm going to show you a little bit of that as well. All right, cool. Hopefully you'll enjoy some of that stuff. But yeah, so roughly about 60 millimeter in diameter. It's a little bit larger than 60 millimeters, but then we've got 381 millimeters overall length. So 15 inches by 2 3/8. Now, for this job, we're going to work from the cylinder axis. The center of that cylinder is going to be our cylinder axis. And basically, if I took that cylinder and unwrapped it into a flat plane, it's the bottom of the material, okay, which is the center of that cylinder. So we're going to work on the cylinder axis. And the XY datum is going to be at the bottom left corner. Always, for a rotary axis job, it's going to be generally the bottom left corner that you're starting from. And my particular CNC rotates around the x-axis. So the x-axis, the y-axis revolves or wraps around that x. For those of you that your fourth axis might be oriented different, your fourth axis, your x-axis values may revolve around your y. So basically you would just rotate everything 90 degrees. Okay, cool. All right. Let's go ahead and get out of this. That's our job setup, and let's go into our models and let's turn off this current model here, and let's talk about what we've got going on. So this little mock-up here is going to, let me get it on the screen. Work with me there, screen, work with me. There we go. This mock-up here, this is what our rolling pin is going to look like. It's going to have an overall length of about 13 inches. The actual rolling pin itself is going to be roughly around 7 inches. And then we're going to have our handles. Now this is going to be one solid piece. It's not going to be separate handles that that stay stationary while the rolling pin is rolling. This is going to be kind of a little bit of a, I don't want to say, I don't think it's more modern, but it's going to be a one-piece rolling pin. Okay. There are going to be a couple of different profiles that we're going to look at, and that's these shapes here. So the lower shape, the lower profile is just the basic rolling pin design, but the upper one is going to be a pasta cutter. Okay. On this pasta cutter, it's going to cut pasta strips about 3/8 of an inch wide. So basically what I did is I drew out the overall size of the rolling pin. I put my radiuses on it where I wanted, and then I came up with a handle design. Now on the handle design, I started off with a very simple rectangle, roughly about the size that I wanted. The overall size from top to bottom of this handle here is about 1.5 inches. So let's go over here and go 1.5 and click apply. I'm sorry, that's not 1.5 inches. What the hell am I thinking? Let me measure. That's not 1.5 inches. Lord have mercy, Laney. Let's see, from here vertically, we're gonna measure. I'm scatterbrained today. From here to here, we're about, okay, about 3/4. I don't know why I was doubling that. So let's go back into that shape tool and make that 3/4. 0.75. All right, and let's go ahead and stretch it out. I'm going to hold the shift key while I stretch this out so it stretches it out in both directions. And then from here, it was kind of just like, okay, what would be somewhat of a comfortable grip? There are rolling pins, you know, many of you know, and I wish I had some reference pictures, but there's rolling pins that are just solid, almost like dowels. They may have a taper in the middle and tapering down. We have rolling pins that have kind of the handle size, you know, with the larger diameter. There's all kinds, and there's just straight dowels where it's just the centerpiece, and they usually use those for kind of embossing cookies or pastries and things like that. So the handles aren't like a requirement, but for me, in the rolling pin designs that I like to create, I do like to create the handles. So that's kind of where we're going to go with that. And so basically it comes down to what is a comfortable shape for a handle. So I went into node editing mode, and I started to come in, and first thing I did is I turned both the upper and lower span into a Bezier curve, so I could start to kind of adjust my curve, you know, to start getting that general shape. And I want a nice transition. Then I came over and said, okay, I want it to kind of come taper in thin, widen up a bit, and then kind of start to taper down again. So I took my upper and lower nodes here on the end here, and I started to kind of bring them down a little bit to what I thought was you know, an acceptable size. You can measure. If you are moving nodes, you can actually type in a value. So if I said, okay, I want to move this node this way 3/8 of an inch, I could just type in 3/8 and hit enter, and I would move it down, kind of thing. But what I did was just visually kind of bring this one in a little bit, bring this one in a little bit, get everything kind of, you know, symmetrical, and thought about how wide I wanted it. And then from there, I started to kind of create that taper and curve, and I could pull this anchor out, you know, so I get more of a kind of a taper where the raised area is kind of more in the middle. The closer that anchor is to that node, the tighter that curve is, right? So the further away we can pull it away, we can start to kind of create that nice curvature. And I ended up really kind of, even though I'm playing around with both nodes here, I ended up really doing 1/2, getting that 1/2, that perfect radius, you know, what I want, and then mirroring it down so it's kind of a perfectly symmetrical handle, instead of trying to guess how far I pulled this anchor and how far I pulled this anchor and things like that. Work with kind of 1/2. So if I take a line and I snap a line through the center here, 90 degrees, then I can kind of focus on one side of this handle more so than the other side. I can kind of start to get that taper and that fill that I want, you know, and that curvature. Once I'm happy with that, then I can, let's move this up off the rolling pin. I can simply just kind of snip away this lower half and then mirror this down. So in the mirror tool, I'm just going to use the bottom, flip to the bottom. I do not want to flip about center, I just want to flip to the bottom. And from there, I can now come in and, you know, trim away my center line and stuff. And if it doesn't trim, come in and we could go back into node editing, and I could pull this node up just a little bit, and I can pull this node up just a little bit, and that way there's a little bit of an overlap in there, and then my scissors will come in and trim away. The problem with doing that, but though, is I've actually created an overlap on my two ends. So if I zoom in, you can see that my pink line is overlapping now, and I'd have to fix that overlap. So really the best way is just to go into node editing and just delete the two spans. Okay, and let me show you that. I'll show you how to clean up the overlap. Let's do the overlap first. Basically, I'd go into node editing mode, and I'd simply pull this back till there's a gap. I would select both of my lines, and I would join with a straight line. Okay, so that would kind of you know, get rid of that overlap. Same thing over here. You know, it would do the same thing here as well. But let's do it a little bit cleaner. Let's get rid of this. Bring our lines back here. All right. Now, instead of moving the nodes up so I create the overlap and trimming away, that kind of screws me up on the ends. It's very simple just to come into node editing and put your mouse over this line, right click and delete the span. Select this one here, right click and delete the span. Done and done. Okay. So, you know, and you would create, you know, whatever handle shape that you think would be comfortable. From time to time, I may just, on a scrap piece of wood, I may just carve a handle just to see what it feels like. I might even just go over to my lathe and kind of shape a handle that I think is comfortable in my hand, and then bring those dimensions over into Vectric and create them as well, rather than just free drawing it. Really depends on, you know, what your workflow is or what your thought process is on how you know, kind of think about things. I could very easily on my 4th axis create, you know, this small part and just kind of get a feel, or I could just chuck up a small block on my lathe, kind of shape something out that, you know, feels good to my hand, and then take that part and take the dimensions from it and draw it. It really just kind of depends on you, or you could just free willy it, you know, whatever you're happy with. And so the you know, the process is you know, pretty straightforward. So once I had my handles laid out, I knew what size I wanted the rolling pin to be as far as diameter. I knew I wanted it to be about a little over 60 millimeters, 2 3/8 inches. And I knew that I wanted that rolling pin to be roughly about 7 inches long. And that's what the shape is. So if we go to the size tool, we're about, on this drawing here, we're about 7 inches in length. And it shows a height of 1.18, but this is just a mock-up drawing. It is actually 2 3/8 inches tall, this part here. All right. Trust me, it is. It says it right there. No, if I go into my measure tool and I measure vertically from here to here in my drawing, it's only 1.18, but that's why I have the 2 3/8 there, because I'm just simulating what I want. I don't necessarily have to draw the whole thing, you know, but it is easier to, you know, kind of do that if you wanted to. Now, once I have, let's go ahead and get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of this center line here as well, and I'll get rid of this measurement. If you want all of this to be sized up appropriately, like in our middle here, if you want it to be sized up appropriately, go ahead and size it. You know, if I go in here and go turn this off because I want it to say 7 inches, and I go 2.375 or 60 millimeters. And by the way, let me show you, you may not know this, and I'm going to go into the help menu and I'm going to go into the manual just to show you where it's at so you can read more about it. But in the manual for Vectric, the list on the left hand side, if you scroll down that list, you're going to come down to our variables. Bear with me. Right here. Calculation edit boxes. Okay. And this will show you the different keyboard shortcuts for doing things like pi or thickness or X, Y, and things like that. Well, one of them is imperial conversion or metric conversion. I or M is your keyboard shortcut. Okay. So when you are inside of any of the value boxes, you know, when you're typing in any of the value boxes and all, you can use the M or I to convert metric to inches. If somebody gives you a plan that's in metric, you can convert that very easily. And of course, if you're transitioning from metric to imperial, 25.4 is your conversion rate, so it would be, you know, inches divided by 25.4 for millimeters, or millimeters times 25.4 for inches, that kind of thing. But you can use M and I in the software. So if I were in this box and I hit the keyboard shortcut M, are you not going to do it for me? Don't mess with me today. There might be another keyboard that I need to use, but 2.375 M. What's my keyboard shortcut? Come on now. Don't make a liar out of me on live TV. Oh, you son of a gun. I actually got to go. What box? Having the type the equation, press the equal sign, blah, 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 special characters. As well as, so we have to use our, we have to use it like we're doing math. 2.375 times M equals, right? 60.325. Sorry, we got to do the math. I thought it was just like hit the letter and it was done, but we all screw up. So you can convert very easily that way and everything. It will, you know, convert back times M or times I, right? Cool. Didn't know if you knew that, but I wanted to share it with you. And I almost screwed up. Almost screwed it up. But you know, if you want your, you know, if you want to draw out and scale out your rolling pin and everything to what size it's supposed to be and all that stuff, go ahead and you know, do that and everything. Now, what I have down here are, I have half profiles. Okay. I have half profiles basically kind of based on the size that I want the material. So my radius, right? So I've got my 2.375 divided by 2, and this is my radius here and everything. So I have a profile that's just my straight rolling pin, and then I have a profile that is got these 3/8 inch diameter circles with the tops cut off of them to create kind of these little spikes. We're going to smooth them out. I'll show you that when we do the modeling, but that's going to create like a pasta cutter and stuff. All right, so get your profile drawn out and then create 2 guidelines. Okay, 2 guidelines. These are going to be our drive rails when we're doing a 2-rail sweep. This is what we're going to sweep that profile along as. So in the modeling tools in Aspire, I have what's called a 2-rail sweep. Now I'm going to show you how to do this with a regular rolling pin or the pasta cutter. I'm going to show you how to do this using the molding toolpath as well for those of you that have desktop and pro. But let's start off with the 2-rail sweep. On the 2-rail sweep, I'm going to come in and select my first drive rail on the left, my second drive rail on the right, and that's going to be my selection. And then I'm going to pick a profile, whichever one, will do both of them. And I'm going to sweep that profile, but scale it to the size of the spans, and I'm going to sweep it between those spans, and I'm going to click apply to create that model and everything. And if we go and close out of this for a minute, and we look at our 3D view, you'll see our rolling pin here, and that is, you know, basically kind of quite thin, right? We need to fatten her up a little. This is too skinny on the handles and the rolling pin and everything. It is not, you know, sized correctly because I was drawing fast and all that good stuff. So here's the deal. From, let's bring the guideline down to here. This is my radius. My handles and my rolling pin need to be 60 millimeters. If I'm going to go 60 millimeters or 60.325, I need half of that. Okay, so 30.1 and some change. So let's look at what size I have here. And then we're going to draw this from scratch. So let's go from here to here. I'm only at a 1/2 inch, right? 0.59 inches. So that means when I roll this pin up, when I sweep this profile and roll it up, I'm only going to have a 1-inch diameter rolling pin, right? That's definitely not what we want. We're shooting for, you know, 2 3/8 inch diameter, or you know, roughly around 60 millimeters. We've been talking about that all day now. All right, let's go ahead and change this up. So this profile, let's get all this stuff out of our way. Let's take and select all of these things. Move them over here for the moment. Let's turn off our grid lines for just a minute. Well, no, let's turn them back on. On this grid line, I need this shape to be 60 millimeters or 2 3/8 divided by 2, and you know the radius. So I'm going to go into the properties of this bottom guideline, and I'm going to create a relative guide. 2.375 divided by 2 equals 1.1875. And when I create that guide, it's showing me that guideline here. Let's get rid of this one. Delete. This one right here. That's what my profile should be up, size should be up to. So I'm actually going to scale this up. There we go. And that looks more like it. I'm going to scale that up. My handles are going to be the right size now and everything. And we're going to do the 2-rail sweep one more time. Let's go in here and let's turn the guidelines off and let's select this. Select this. Go into our 2-rail sweep tool and make that our selection. Make sure those lines that you draw are sweeping across from top to bottom. Make sure these arrows on the red and green line are facing the same way, not opposite, facing the same way. So that's our selection. This is our profile. We're going to click apply to sweep that. And let's turn off the previous one we made. Actually, let's delete it to keep things clean. I'm going to delete that previous one. And let's go in now. That's what my rolling pin should look like. All right, so now it's, when it's generating its preview, it's going to be distorted. Every time I move this thing around, it's going to be distorted. But let's leave everything alone for a second. Let it catch up to itself. And you're going to see that nice little transition disc I have here into that rolling pin on the handle. Let's move this out a little bit so you can see that. Okay, so make sure that your profile is of the appropriate size, is the radius of what you're doing. So if I were to unwrap this, my profile shape, right, that profile shape, make sure it's sized appropriately before you do your sweep, or you end up with a little stick of a dowel like I had a moment ago and everything. So this is what our part looks like unwrapped. All right, cool. Let's see here. Hey Harvey, how you doing, bud? Let's see here. Hey Chris Crafts and Phil and everybody that's popped in. Russ Meadows, Bruce DeGarmo, and everyone, thanks for joining me. All right, so that's our basic kind of rolling pin design. We're going to dress it up a little bit with some patterns. You know, if this is going to be a pastry, excuse me, I got choked up on the word pastry. If we're going to be like a cookie pattern embosser, you know, pastry embosser, embossing, not embosser, embossing. If we're going to do some embossing and everything to create some patterns, I'm going to show you how we can create a nice array of patterns here on this. Before I do that, let's go over and let's look at our pasta cutter. So let's come in here, and I'm going to do the same thing with the pasta cutter. Okay, I pretty much want the pasta cutter profile to be the same size as my rolling pin, but I want it to have those you know, nice spikes and everything in here. And the thing of it is I need to, if I were to measure this, right, because I want my strips of pasta to get cut, I want it to be a certain size. They're either going to be, you know, 3/8, eighth of an inch, you know, like if it's an angel hair or something. I'm not a aficionado on different types of pasta, but you know, the size of my little gullets there need to kind of correspond. Now, if I were to measure this right now, let's go from here to here horizontally, from here to here, you know, I'm at 3/8. So I do not want to really distort, you know, this design too much. Okay, so I don't want to stretch it in lengthwise or anything. I can stretch it upward. I'll just have to do some adjustment on the bottom of my gullets and everything, but I don't want to stretch it long ways, because then that's going to stretch my teeth apart, you know, my little grooves apart and stuff. So it's already sized appropriately, but it is, if I bring my guideline in here and snap it here, and I measure, and I'm actually going to measure to the outer points of the gullet. If I measure this vertically from that guideline up to the top of one of those points, you know, I'm only at 0.888. So I mean, I'm only going to get, you know, 875 and 875. What is that? 1 5/8 inches in diameter, and that's not what I want. I want a nice, decent size pasta cutter and all. So I got to stretch it up as well. And you know, it's because of how I drew them. I was just laying out everything and all, but I need to kind of bring everything up the same way I did with this lower one. So I'm gonna, once again, I'm gonna create a relative guide, and that'll show me what my points need to be brought up to, so I can drag them up here to get that height and all. and it doesn't really too badly affect my gullets. They made them a little bit deeper, kind of stretched them out a little bit. But I can shallow those up a couple of ways. I can go into node editing mode. I can select all of these nodes across the bottom here, and I can use my up arrow key to kind of reduce those gullets. You know, I don't need them too deep or anything like that, right? So I can, you know, kind of reduce them in and stuff. What's important for me is that my points to the radius point, the center of this, is the right size. So let's take a look at this pasta cutter. Let's turn this off. Once again, we're going to select our drive rails in our 2-rail sweep, and we're going to select our pasta cutter here and click apply. Apply that across. Now I definitely don't want these nice sharp points, which you'll see in just a moment. Let's go into the molding toolpath in the 3D view. Let that regenerate itself. It looks funky when it's not generated properly. All right, so let's turn it sideways like this and everything. All right, on this pasta cutter, I definitely don't want, let me get it a little closer and let it regenerate. I don't want these sharp points, okay? I want to blunt them up a little bit. And that smoothing is going to help me with that. So let's unwrap this into a flat plane, and you can see those kind of spikes in there, those sharp edges and all. Even though this is going to be a pasta cutter, I don't need something that thin and sharp to cut the pasta. So I want to slightly round over those sharp tips. And I'm going to do that with the smoothing tool. So I'm going to apply some smoothing to this. And if I go too crazy, it's going to really round off those edges, and I don't want to do that. I do want a little, just a small radius. So I'm actually going to bring this, if I have no smoothing in it, I've got those, you know, sharp spikes here and everything, but I just want to bring them down just a little bit. Okay, I want to just kind of start knocking off that sharp edge and everything. So I'm going to come down just a little bit to where I start getting that little bit of rounding, but you can see these kind of white center lines. Let me see, they show up there. And so there's still a bit of a point there. You know, it's kind of nice and rounded, but there's still a little bit of a point. It's just not so sharp. You know, again, if I go too much with the smoothing, I really start rounding those off. And everything, and I want to kind of back it off a little bit. So I just want a little bit of rounding. That way, when I come in here, let's zoom in. You know, I have just a little bit of rounding there, right, with just a little peak. So it'll be plenty enough to cut with. So let's go ahead and apply that smoothing, and now, you see how it's got the spikes back? That's because there are two models on top of each other. When I created the smoothing, it recreated the model with that smoothing. So I can turn off the original, which is, in my case, component number 4 here, because, you know, I don't need that. Okay? So there's my smooth model. So let's zoom out here, and, you know, on this one, I'm going to be putting some, you know, decent, I mean, we're cutting dough and pastries and stuff. I'm going to put some decent pressure on there. So I want my handles a little bit wider. So you can see they're just a little bit more blunt and everything for me to just really kind of push into and everything and all. So when it comes to rolling pins, if I was on a CNC where my X values wrapped around my Y, then everything that I'll be doing here would be rotated 90 degrees, right? But my Y axis, the height of my computer screen, wraps around the X for my 4th axis of on the DWC 2440. So I'm in the horizontal, you know, X, and then the values are wrapping around that Y. Or the Y values are wrapping around that X. So everything I'm doing here, if your CNC is set up different, where your 4th axis is along the Y, not the X, just rotate everything. I'm just talking about 90 degrees. All right. Now, let's go back and let's turn this off and let's go back to our previous component here. Our previous rolling pin. Notice the handles are a little bit more narrow here and everything, because I'm going to be, you know, I would like a little bit of a grip because I'm going to kind of be pushing down, but I don't want to grip it tight because I need those to spit in my hand. There's not a drive shaft in the middle where that center rolling pin is rolling and my hands are just staying stationary here. I've got to let it roll in my hands as I'm pushing down. But I'd like to add a little bit of decoration. Now we're kind of getting into the cookie decor or pastry decor, you know, embosses. And in this model here, in this area here, the rolling pin area, I could create a little laser engraving, you know, if I had a laser engraving, I could do some laser burning to create some really cool intricate designs. You know, I could do some V carving, which is what I'm going to do here. I could even do some 3D modeling. We're not going to be doing a concave 3D model. We'd be doing a convex. Said that backwards. We're not going to be doing a convex. We'd be doing a concave. The model would be kind of reversed in, so that way when it ran over the dough would be pushed up. Let me show you an image so you can visually see here. We're going to use old Googly for this. Let's come in here and let me find a good example. This is what you call class not being prepared. Should have had all this stuff ready to go for you. Let's go embossed. And let's go here, right click and save. All right, let me open that up and pull it over on the screen. Okay, let's zoom in here. Okay, now this little miniature rolling pin, I think this rolling pin overall in this picture is probably maybe like 5 to 7 inches overall, handles included. And it's got a little laser engraving in there, so when the dough is rolled out, it creates these cool little imprints and all. Now these imprints, this concave here, this could be a 3D model. It could be a V carve. It could be a little pocket cut. It could be a laser engraving. That's what that is. That's why you see that dark brown, you know, because those were laser burn in and stuff, you know, if you have a laser and all. But we want to create kind of that recess and everything, so we get those nice cool patterns. And we really want a little bit of depth to them. We don't want a shallow depth, because when this cookie or pastry bakes, it's not going to have, the detail will kind of lose itself. So we want a nice emboss. We want a nice, you know, bit of depth in there, so that way when everything starts to fill out, you can still see the design in the pastry once it's cooked and all. And now let me show you an example of a 3D model being carved into a rolling pin design. And let me pop that in. Bear with me a second. All right, let's go back to here and pull this over here. This is an example of a 3D model getting carved in, you know, and in this case, this looks like it was probably hand carved. I don't think it was CNC carved. You know, it's a little rough around the edges and all, but you know, that's what, you know, I mean, this is a nice little handmade rolling pin that somebody did, but they engraved this model design and you really look at that pastry and look at that embossing that it created and everything, I mean, it's really, really nice. And you can imagine different types of, you know, breads and pastries and cookies and things like that, pie crust, whatever the case may be, they would have some really nice design. So I really like that three-dimensional aspect of an actual 3D model getting carved in, you know, in that negative state into the material, so it creates kind of this positive, really nice embossing. We can achieve this with V-carve designs as well, which you'll see in just a moment. Laser engraving, like I said, and all that good stuff. But some really, really nice example there that I wanted to share with you. Okay, so what we're going to do, I have a pattern shape here. This shape started off as a rectangle, so I'm going to draw another one right next to it. So let's come over here, open up the rectangle tool, draw out a rectangle to the size that you want it, and in this case I'm going to go square corners. Now there's two ways that I can do this. Number one, it's an internal radius. You saw that just a minute ago with a 1/2 inch radius. You know, I can bring that in that fashion there. Or if I undo that, I could, long way around, I could rotate this piece here. Let's close this tool. I could rotate it 45 degrees. And of course, I had the model selected and not my part. Let's do that again. There we go. I could rotate that 45 degrees, and then I could go into node editing, and I could turn this into an arc. Kind of bring in that curve and stuff. Now that I've got that curve, I'm actually going to delete everything else. And then I'm going to take my mirror tool and I'm going to flip that shape right, bottom, left, right? To create that same shape. Take those four parts and join them together, right? So that's the long way around. Otherwise, it's an internal radius, you know, a rectangle internal radius to create that same shape with those internal radius. So either way gets you from point A to B. You're just learning the different ways to do both. Okay, so let's get rid of this. Now, overall, this shape size here, if we look at the size tool, it's a little over 1 inch, 1.0667, and I come up with this number, and for those of you that are like, all right, now he said he was going to use metric, it's about 27 millimeters, okay? The 27.09, but roughly about 27 millimeters. The size, to come up with that size, I basically said, okay, I have a 7-inch area that I'm going to be, you know, putting this pattern on. That's my rolling pin. The main part of the body of the rolling pin is 7 inches. I want to be a little in from the edges, and then I kind of laid these out end to end to, you know, see how many or what size I needed to get that nice fit for myself. And this was the size that I come up with on that 7 inches. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab this and I'm going to drag it down here. Okay. And notice I'm halfway on, halfway off on my board and everything here. This guideline right here shows me where, you know, my point ought to be. And basically what that is where that guideline is where this starts radiusing over on the edge. And I don't want this pattern to fall into that off the edge in that radius. So in the, you know, that's where this radius is beginning right here. So I want to be just inside of that. So I drew some guidelines to kind of give me some guidelines here and here where that falls and stuff. But now I'm going to go into the array tool, my array tool here. And the goal for this is I want one row to go end to end, side to side, end to end, so full length. But then I need my upper row to actually, and let me draw this out. I'll draw this out to show you. Imagine, if you will, that I have these end to end, and then I have another part that is coming in right here. Snap to the center there. And then if I took these parts, let me take this and this. Hold your shift key, boy, not your control key. There we go. And I bring these two parts up to here. Then I create this pattern where I kind of have this little circle with this little star inside of it, you know, and everything, when everything gets laid out, right? So I need my parts to go end to end, but I need them to step down halfway on my y-axis. So they're going to, x-axis is going to be full length, y-axis is going to be half length. And then I'm going to be stepping over half the design as well. So what I mean by that is, let's get rid of these two shapes. And in that array tool, when I select this part here, I'm going to go 7 rows, 7 columns, not 77, 7 columns. My overall size is 10667, so that's going to be the offset from the left side of one part to the left side of the other. That's going to be my offset, 10667. But over here on the Y, I need that to be half. So 1.0667 divided by 2. Okay? And this number here is exactly how much I need that second row, every other row, to step over. Okay? To step over and everything. So that number is going to actually fall there too. 0.53335. Okay, so when I copy this and everything, you know, it'll create it'll start creating this pattern. Now I only created part of it and everything, but it'll start kind of creating this pattern. You see how they fall and everything. Now let's create the real deal. Okay, and we have 7 rows, 7 columns. We're stepping over 0.5335 here, 0.5335, and this needs to be 1.0667. And when we create that pattern, you can start to see that pattern emerge. So we have these nice little stars inside these circles when everything lays together. All right, now I need much more than 7 rows. I actually need 16 of them. So we're going to go select our part. And we're going to go 16. Copy. Okay. Looks all crazy now, but it'll look cool when we carve it and all. And now with these parts here, I want to center them using the align tool. I want to center them on the material here, and then everything outside of kind of my guidelines I need to get rid of. But I don't just willy-nilly delete it because you know, you're gonna play havoc trying to catch up like on closed and open vectors and all that stuff. So I'm gonna draw a perimeter, and I actually have that rectangle right here for myself. We're going to draw a perimeter, and I'm going to center that on my material as well. And basically it goes right to the top edge, it goes right to the bottom edge, and then here, okay, here I have it cutting off right at the tip of this part on the left, and right at the tip on this part on the right. Okay, now you're saying, wait a minute, Laney, you said you're going to use your guidelines and everything. That's for the next pattern. You'll see that in a minute. This one is tip to tip. I want a nice full circle on each end. So I want a full circle here and then a full circle here. Okay,
So I want that full circle. So I'm going to select all of my little, let's turn this off. I'm going to select all my little stars and everything, and I'm going to hold down the shift key and turn off the rectangle. I don't want that selected first or in the middle. I want it selected last. But first I'm going to group all those stars and everything together so the software treats it like one object. Now I'm going to come in and select my little border last, and I'm going to go into the trim tool. That's the icon that looks like a little candy cane or barber pole. That's your trim tool. And I want to clear everything outside of that boundary, that rectangular boundary. I want to get rid of everything. So I want to clear it all away. Okay. Cool. Oh, thanks, Phil. I'm glad you're enjoying the shortcuts. I try to explain some of the shortcuts as I'm using them and stuff. Hopefully they're useful to you. So now that I have this pattern here in the middle, I can now get rid of my vector boundary. And I'm not going to delete it. I like to keep it in this design in case you guys need it, because I'm going to save these patterns for you and stuff. And speaking of saved patterns, let me interject for a minute. Jumping back a couple of weeks to the Scrabble board project we did. I'm working on those files. I promised you I would have those up and live, and it's been a couple of weeks now. I will have those up live. I changed some design aspects of it and some of the toolpaths and all. So those files will be in the video description for download probably by mid tomorrow day. Tomorrow. I'm going to be working on it throughout this afternoon or this evening when we get out of here, out of class tonight and stuff. But now that I have this pattern here, this is going to be a V-carve. And our first step is to kind of create our 3D rough cut toolpath, our 3D finish cut toolpath, and then we're going to do our V-carve toolpath on this pattern, and I'm going to show you some other pattern options as well. I got one right over here that I really like, and I'll show you how to make that from scratch. All right, let's go ahead and start off with our models visible. We're going to go into a 3D rough cut. The first thing I want to do is go into my job setup up here, my material setup, not my job setup, my material setup. And I want to make sure that everything is set properly in the center. I have no errors, all that wonderful jazz. I'm good. So here on the 3D rough cut, I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch end mill to kind of hog away the waste material. I'm going to use the model as the boundary because remember, I don't, my model only goes up to the end of these black boxes right here. I want the outside areas not to be cut because that's where my spur drive and life center, or if you were using a 4-jaw chuck or 3-jaw chuck and things like that, we don't want the router bit getting near those. So I'm using the model as a boundary. I'm just doing a Z-level raster to hog away the waste material, and we're going to go ahead and calculate that toolpath. Okay, and so on that toolpath, that's just going to go and remove all that waste materials, mostly around the handle area and everything. And it's going to, just kind of start kind of creating that rough taper that you see here. Okay. All right, for the 3D finish cut, I'm actually using 2 bits. One of them is an 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. The other is a 16th inch. It's going to do a little bit. The 16th inch literally is only doing 2 little strips. And it's going to do a little bit of touch up right on these radius edges here and everything, where my 1/8 inch is a little bit too big. But I mean, literally, it's probably like a 3 or 4 second run, if that. It's not long at all for that smaller bit. And you might decide, I don't need it. But I wanted to put it in there. So I'm using those 2 bits. Again, I'm using the model as the boundary. And I'm going to calculate this. Now for the rest machining, I'm just basically at a 0.00001, just which is roughly the center line here on coarse or fine, and I'm going to calculate that. Kool-Aid, do you have a video on setting up a rotary axis and calibrating the motor? No, I don't. For digital wood carver, I mean, our motors are already calibrated and stuff, but you have to set up, for every job you're doing, you have to set up the steps per unit. And I'm assuming that's what you mean by calibrating is the steps per unit on the rotary axis. How many steps it needs to take for that diameter material to turn 360 degrees. We have based on our large tooth pulley on the fourth axis and our small tooth pulley, we have that 1/3 ratio for the belt, and our calculation is based on that large diameter teeth, small diameter teeth, and it does a calculation to create the steps per unit automatically, and it's built into our software. I wrote the code and it's built into the software. I don't have a video on that, but that might be something that I can include next week, Kool-Aid. I can put together like a little Excel spreadsheet or something maybe for you. In our controller software, Planet CNC TNG, it's an automatic function. It's called a step calculator. It's a little code that I wrote, and they can type in their diameter, and it automatically calculates the steps per inch based on their pulley settings, you know, for that unit and stuff. So I could do a little short segment on that and kind of an Excel spreadsheet to show you how the math would be on that. Yep. As usual, Laney, stellar subject matter. Thanks, Dean. That's a hell of a word. Stellar. That's cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate that, Dean. I really appreciate that very much. All right. So we've got our 3D finish cut now here, and there's two tool paths that created. One for the 1/8 inch tapered ball nose, one for the 16th inch tapered ball nose. Now, if I run just the 1/8 inch tapered ball nose, preview that visible tool path, that's going to be doing a hog load of the work, okay? A mass majority of the work here, you know, the 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. And I'll slow down, once this is done, I'll slow down the speed and show you what the 16th inch ball nose is doing. And you might think to yourself, it's not really worth it, or it is, or what have you, but I'm going to slow down the speed here, and I'm going to zoom in to kind of one of the handles, because it's the same on both sides. And I'll turn this just a little bit here. But this 3D finish toolpath is literally only doing this little step right here where the 1/8 inch couldn't really get in to create that nice little step. And then it's kind of cleaning up this radius right here on the outside edge of the handle. So, you know, it's coming in and just touching up those areas. Let's see if we can draw the tool there. Is it on the wrong side? It's on the wrong side. Let me see if I can speed that up just a little bit. Alright, it might not draw the tool because I clicked that after the fact to show the tool, but there it is. So it's literally just coming in and just cleaning up that little transition into the handle, and then it's going to come over and clean up that transition at the end of the handle here and everything. So we can turn that speed back up, and I mean, it probably at its most it's just a few minutes. It's not going to take long to do that nice little touch up. All right, so now that we have our part, let's zoom back out here. We've got our part cut, and again, if I wrap it up, you can see where we're at, and you see the two ends there. Those get cut off. Okay, once everything's done, those two ends get cut off, and then you kind of clean up the edges, a little sanding and all. But this is our rolling pin before any nice detail or anything's carved into it and stuff like that. All right, so now we get down to our little parts here. And on our V-carve toolpath, I'm going to have a flat depth of about a 1/16 of an inch. So I'm limiting the cut to flatten out at about 1/16 of an inch. I don't need this to carve to a big V or anything like that or anything. I just a 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to be using a 60-degree V-bit, and I'm also going to be using a 1/16 of an inch end mill, because that end mill is actually going to be cutting inside these little ovals, these 4 little ovals around each star. That's where the bit is going to be cutting. These stars are going to be raised up, and these are going to be cut out. So when you create this carving, you're going to have these 4 things raise up to create kind of a circular pattern, and it will create that cookie. And I'll show you kind of what that looks like by creating a 3D model of it, so you can see what that pattern would look like when it's carved. We'll do that in just a moment. But so a 1/16 of an inch end mill, 60-degree V-bit, limiting the cut to a 1/16 of an inch deep. We're going to make sure that we are projecting the toolpath onto the 3D model. It's important that that's checked. We're going to calculate that toolpath. Now that warning that popped up is letting me know that some of my vectors are overlapping, and I know that some of my points and everything are overlapping, and that's fine. I want them to kind of be touching, and I'm not going to weld them together or any of that stuff. There's no need for it. So let's unwrap this into a flat plane, and let's preview the toolpath. But wait, there's more. Look, remember that I said that the ovals are going to get cut, and the little kind of diamonds, or the little 4-pointed stars, they're going to be raised. Well, that is completely opposite of what I'm seeing here, and that's not good. I need to reverse that. So in order to reverse that, I got to create a boundary around it to be able to use to almost create that extra line. And that is going to be this bad boy right here that we used earlier. I'm just going to center that back onto the material, and I'm going to select this, and let's undo that for a second. Oh, not that far. Let's move that back over. Where'd my rectangle go? Oh, you son of a gun. Put that back there for a minute. I want to take, and on the sides here, I want to bring them in just a little bit. So let me turn off these toolpaths. I want to select this whole thing, this whole pattern here, and I'm literally going to kind of slightly squish it in just a little bit. I mean, literally, I'm going to zoom in really tight, hold down the shift key, and I'm going to bring this in just a tad, not much. Because when I bring this in and center it, I need that small little gap between that rectangle and my pattern. Not a big gap, just a small little gap. I want it to be virtually invisible, so I don't want it too wide. And I'll be able to tell, and I'll show you if it's too wide. We'll see that in the design in just a moment here. And so let's look at my height. So I'm just, you see that width right there above? That's kind of really what I want to be on the sides as well. So let me do that. Let me zoom back in. Let me bring that in. Just hold that shift key so it does both sides at the same time. And I really want to bring that. I want it to be super, super close. Okay, virtually invisible. All right, now when I select all of this, and I'm going to redo that toolpath, Let it calculate. Now you can see that now I'm getting the correct cuts. So let's preview that visible toolpath and do that carving and everything. And now you can see, you know, I've got those kind of stars raised up. So when this you know, cookie decorator and everything gets cut in, these stars are kind of going to get pushed down in, and the dough is going to puff up into these pocket areas and all to kind of create this nice, cool pattern. Okay, and all. So now that I've got that, let's wrap this up. Let it focus. Let's turn it a little bit so we can kind of, so it's not so whoa on our eyes. And so you can see that pattern here that got created. And this is just using a V-bit and a small end mill. This could have been laser engraved in if I wanted to use a laser. It could have been just pocket cut in, straight pocket. I like using the V-carve toolpath because it gives a little bit of an angle. So when that dough goes up, it has a draft to it so it comes back out. It doesn't get stuck on the straight sides and all. So I kind of recommend the V-carve pattern. Okay. Now the tough thing about the patterns and all is these patterns, I can literally, the same way I created this, I could create all kinds of patterns for picture frame, you know, molding designs, like kind of embossments and stuff. It could be floral, it could be this, it could be that. I could create this as a kind of a pattern for the bottom of a tray, like a, not a butler's caddy, I forget what it's called, but a nice little dinner tray that could have the whole bottom kind of with this pattern, this decorative pattern. I could, you know, really do all kinds of fun things and all with just creating patterns for my V-carving, not necessarily for rolling pins, just in general, you know. So these repeatable patterns that can just be, you know, spread across and sized and create all kinds of unique things. And with that in mind, let's talk about this pattern here. Okay. Now I'm going to over to the right, or the left, sorry, I'm going to draw it from scratch. And it all starts with an image, right? So our vector. So let's import a bitmap. And online, I went online and I typed in flower petal vector, right? Flower petal vector. And it's a vector. And the image that I got was a rounded flower petal SVG that was online. And if I import that in, let's move that up here. That's this guy right there. Okay, so it's I didn't have to trace the photo or anything. It came in as a SVG, and all I had to do, you know, was kind of get it sized down to an appropriate, you know, size and things. And what I wanted was on each of these octagons and everything is I wanted the outermost octagon size to be about 1 1/16 of an inch. Okay, so I started from there. You know, I traced my image and then I came into my polygon tool, doing an 8-sided polygon. You know, I want to, you know, create that shape, and I want that size to be roughly 1 1/16 by 1 1/16, you know, in size. And I know that in here I'm going to be offsetting some other lines. So let's go to the offset tool, offset inward, and the first one's going to be 1/4 of an inch. So we're going to offset, no, I'm sorry, the first one's going to be 3/8 of an inch, and then the next one's going to be 1/4. So we're going to offset 3/8 of an inch. Laney, do your duty there, buddy. Not 3/8. I'm not thinking. it is an 1/8 and a 16th. So the first one's going to be 1/8 of an inch inward to create this outer boundary. And Lord have mercy, Lainey, I'm getting senile. I'm getting senile. The first one at this size, this small little size, if it was bigger, it'd be different. It's going to be, the first one's going to be a 16th of an inch. Lord have mercy. All right. That's what I want, 16th of an inch. And then from there, I want another little strip there as well. And that vector is going to be offset in, I'm going to go a 32nd. So 0.03125. Okay. And what that's going to do is it's going to create this little strip here. And that part's going to show up really nice in the embossing and all. So from there, now I can bring in my flower, and I'll select that, and I'll select this inner vector and align it to the center of that last selected vector. Group your vectors there, child of mine. These are all individual petals, right? So when I centered it, it shrunk them all up. Group your petals. So I'm going to hit G on the keyboard for group. That way I don't have to mess with it. Now I'm going to select this vector here, and I'm going to align to the center. And I want to size it, you know, and I actually did pretty good right out of the gate. But I want to give it, you know, some size and some space. Now if we compare this one to these, my flowers in these are just a little bit smaller with a little bit more room around. And you got to think about, you know, that dough and all that stuff. So I kind of would agree with that this would be just a slight bit smaller. Holding that shift key, grabbing one in the corner, bringing it in just a little bit, you know, to have that pattern. All right, so that's how we created that. Now, what I did after it was created, first thing I did was hold down the control, select everything, hold down the control key. That's going to allow me to drag a copy. And I'm going to drag this copy outward and snap it right to the end here, right to the edge. Okay. And then I'm going to hold down the, I'm going to grab it at the bottom and hold down the control key, drag that up here, hold down the control key, drag this over here. So I have these four. Now I want space in between. That's going to create kind of a lattice work, a grid. So these two, I want to do a 1/16 of an inch, or, you know, about a 1/16 of an inch of space. So I'm going to move them up on the y-axis relative a 1/16 of an inch. Okay. Then these two on the right, make sure you get all the vectors. I'm going to move them to the right a 1/16 of an inch. That's on the X. Okay. And that gives me my spacing that I want for this pattern. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to rotate that rectangle 45 degrees, and I'm going to come in here and grab this in the center and snap right to the center of that one. And then I'm going to size this rectangle down holding that shift key. I'm going to drag these sides in so they snap here. Drag this in so it snaps there. And what this does is, the reason why I'm drawing that rectangle and sizing it up, oh, let me fix this. The reason why I'm sizing that rectangle up to that is because it gives me a center point. I'm all about kind of smart design and all. And I could have measured and I could have drew lines, right? I didn't have to draw a rectangle and get it all sized and all that stuff to get that center point. I'll show you another way with a line. But what that did is I want to be able to put a 1/8 inch diameter circle. I wanted to be able to snap right to the center to drop that in there. And then I wanted to be able to put a 1/16 of an inch, 0.0625 circle right in the center of that to create that. It's going to create like a nice little dimple and everything. And once I created that, you know, I don't need that rectangle anymore. And now I have my pattern that is going to be copied you know, multiple times over to create this nice little wall pattern or whatever it is, right? And I'll show you how to do the array tool for this. I'll show you how to do the array tool. We're not there yet, but so I have this kind of pattern laid out. And for this, knowing that I'm going to be stepping over a 16th and, you know, up a 16th on my spaces here, here's what we're going to do. Now that I have kind of the layout that I want, now I'm going to come in and, oh, before we do the layout, let me show you another way I could have done this. I could have taken a line and drew a line from here to here, okay? And that's all I would have needed. I could have then taken my circle tool, come right over and snapped right to the center of that line and drew my 16th of an inch, 0.125, come over here to the center of that line again and drew my 1/8 inch, right? I didn't have to do the rectangle thing and rotating it and sizing it and all. I could have just drew a line to get that center point, you know? I'm just kind of showing you, you know, different options, you know, long way, short way, all kinds of ways. There's more than one way to get from point A to B. Okay, so now that I have the general layout, I don't need these two, and I don't need this one. All I need is my circle and my part right here. Now let's go in and let's move this to a new layer. I'm going to call it pattern 1A. I'm going to turn that visibility off and get rid of that. And I'm going to bring this part over here. I'm going to come down, and remember, this thing wraps around. My flat layout wraps around, right? So there's going to be a seam on the back side, you know, on this wrap. So I need half of it hanging off one side, half of it hanging off the other, kind of thing. And also on this here, I'm going to just kind of snap it up on the line there. And then I got to turn my guidelines back on, because this is the one that this guideline gets used for. And I'm going to grab this and I'm going to snap it right on that guide at the center point. Okay. Now that I have that, now I can come into the array tool, and on this one it's going to be 6 rows, 6 columns. Now this part is 1.563, okay? So on my offset here, it's going to be that 1.1563 plus the 16th of an inch. Okay, from the left side of one part to the left side of the other is the full size of the part, 1.1563, plus that 16th of an inch gap that I want. Okay, so hit equals on that. And the same thing for the Y. So it's going to be 1.2188. There's not going to be any displacement on the rows at all. They're going to go nice columns and all. And we're going to go ahead and click apply to create that pattern. Okay, now I actually needed one more row, so let's undo that. Undo, and 7 rows. Okay, now on this I didn't quite land at the center, right? So I need to basically either resize my part so that when I do my rows and columns that it lays out perfectly in the center, or I could come in here and if I remove these circles, they don't need to be there. I could look at if I take this, and also I needed one more there, but if I come over and center that on my material, I can look and see like where it's getting cut off. So it's getting cut off here. So that means that this part right here, this upper part, that should be this part here, and it's not. It's a little taller. So I'm going to have kind of a funky looking flower on that back side if I don't fix that, if I don't change that and everything. And so I have choices that I need to make. I either need to size the part up and I can kind of do my layout and see what size I need to be at. Or I need to increase my spacing to push each of the rows up a little bit. So instead of that 1/16 of an inch gap, it might be 0.08 or something like that to kind of bring things, you know, up and down some. Because I already have this here. What would I need to do with each of these to space them out to get that centered there, right? So a quick way for me to kind of figure out what my spacing would be to go ahead and pull this guy up to there on my line, because he'd get cut off halfway here, cut off halfway down there, and when the two parts come together it creates the hole, right? And when I bring this up, I have I can measure vertically from here to here, which is 0.3028, and I need that to be divided between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. Okay, 6 spaces. So I'm gonna utilize one of my boxes here. I'll just select something, and if I go 0.3028 divided by 6 equals, I get a spacing of 0.050467. Now, right off the bat, that immediately sounds off to me because, you know, I'm already spaced out a 1/16 of an inch, right? So I got to take that into account. All right, so let's do this. 0.3028 divided by 6 equals, that gives me that 0.04. But let's do it like this. 0.3028 minus the 1/16 of an inch that I've already kind of, you know, in my other spacing and stuff, equals, okay, 2.403. Divide that by the 6, and this 0.04005 is what I need to add to each of those 1/16 of an inch to level that out. Okay, so let's see if my math is right. Let me write that number down. 0.04005, 0.0625, and let's see here, 10.1055. All right, so basically this plus 0.0625 equals 0.10255. Okay, that's going to be the number. That's going to be my spacing. So I'm going to copy that. All right, let's go ahead and undo, Control Z. Okay, get back to this right here. And now I'm about to totally screw up, and it's on purpose so you can see what happens. But remember, I laid out this circle based on the center of a 1/16 of an inch space between 4 parts, right? Well, now I'm increasing that space, not only on the width but on the height, which is going to change my center point. Okay? But before I worry about that, that's going to take just a second to fix and everything. But before I worry about that, I want to make sure that my math is correct. Okay? So I'm not really paying attention to the circles right now. It's just this part. So if I come into the array tool and I come back to my 1.1563, that's the size of my part, it's up here, okay, and I add in plus my 0.10255 equals, that gives me 1.25885. Let's do the same thing here, 1.25885. Make sure I don't have too many decimals. When I copy this over, okay, oh, I overshot it. How the hell did I overshoot it? Okay, I overshot it. So there's something I missed on my math. What I missed, ladies and gentlemen, throw it down in the comment section. Need to minus the original size, Philip Piper says. I think I did the 1/16 of an inch. I'm working on the gap. The gap. So tell me if I'm thinking wrong. The gap doesn't look right, right? So let me, I had to subtract the original 1/16 of an inch from that 0.3028, I think is what Philip was talking about. But just imagine if this did work out. We're going to fix it here in a second. But you see my circle is now no longer centered. So we've got to fix that. All right. Now, one way or another, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a different method to help me lay out my parts because this spacing, I overshot it by so much, okay? And I'm going to find out what that overshoot was. I'm going to measure that, and I'm going to divide that by 6. And I'm going to subtract that from my little thing here. So let's go into our measure tool, and let's measure from the center of this part where I need to land to this edge right here, vertically, 0.0918. So I overshot it by 0.0918. Now if I take that 0.0918, and I'm actually going to open up the calculator for this, I'm not great at math and I don't want to, use any of the boxes over here right now. But if I take that 0.0918 and I 0.0918 and I divide that over those 6 gaps, right? That gives me 0.0153. Sorry. Copy that. And if I come back into my array tool, and let's Control Z to undo, select this, and if I subtract minus that equals, hope that I'm doing this right, 5th time's a charm, 2, 4, 3, 6. If I copy that, I should land right in the middle. So we get to it, right? We get to it. Yay. Took a little while to get there, but we got there. It didn't take, about 15 minutes to get things figured out. But I just had to, I got 6 spaces in there. I need to spread the spaces out a little bit so it lands perfectly, so I can cut the top half off and the bottom half so when it wraps around they connect, and I got to figure out, okay, how do I get there? How do I get there? What's my spacing and everything? Now, on the circle here, okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns and 7 rows, okay? So what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to select the circles and I'm going to delete them. Okay, I'm just coming in and selecting all these circles and getting rid of them. I'm not going to recreate the whole array. Just going to make a new array for these circles. Okay, on this here, same way I showed you before, I'm going to draw a line from the center of this part to the center of this part. Space bar to finish. I'm going to take this circle here and, grab it right in the center, and I'm going to snap it right to the center of that line. I'm gonna get rid of that line. Now I'm gonna take this part here and I need to create my array, right? So how far does it need to go over for that center, right? Well, easiest way for me to do it is to draw another line here, spacebar, grab this circle, make a copy holding that control key down and snap this to that line, and then measure, okay, from the left side of this part to the left side of this part. So if I come in and measure, or the gap between, we can do gap this time, we'll do gap. So if I measure, because it's going to be the same horizontally and vertically, so I just need to measure once. From the edge here to the edge here, the gap in between the two parts, that's my offset, okay? So 1.1186. So I can delete those two parts. 1.1186. Select this part here, go into the array tool, 6 and 7, 1.1186, 1.1186, and copy it. Oh, you son of a gun. I was in offset, not gap. Undo. Change that over to gap and do it again. There we go. All right, so now I got my dots in there. Okay. All right, so now all my dots are all centered and everything, and now I can get rid of the things that I don't need. I don't need this outside row here. I do not need this outside row here. And now I need to trim these parts, you know, cutting them in half and stuff. So I'm going to use my rectangle again, okay? My rectangle. Here, I'm actually gonna, the rectangle is gonna go right up to this edge here, where this box is. So let's draw a rectangle this time. And I'm gonna go right to this guideline and right diagonally down on the guideline. I'm going to zoom in and make sure that I hit the guideline, which I didn't. Okay, it needs to be, oop, that was a corner box, not the center box. Let's go into the center box. Pull it over to that guideline there. Come over to this side. I landed right on that guideline. That's great. Make sure that I'm on my lower part, which I'm not. Just off of it. So let's come up here and drag that down. Snap right to that. Make sure that I'm good up here. Nope, just a little high. Zoom in really tight. Pull that down to there. Okay, so now I got my border that I'm going to trim to. Okay, so select all of our, let's turn off these guidelines. Select all of our pattern. Come in and deselect the rectangle and then select it again. So we want it last. But I want to group these things together first. So group. There we go. Select that rectangle last and trim, clearing outside of the boundary to clear and redraw all those parts. Oh, Laney, you goofball. Let me stop that. Stop. In the name. I want to select all these parts. I need to center them left to right, guys. I need to center them left to right. So align to the center. Left to right. There we go. All right, now I want to do that. Select all those first, border last, and clear outside. Let it go through and cut all those off. It's going to take a second. So hopefully not confusing. I know it was because I screwed up my math on the spreading the things apart and all that. But making fun little geometric shapes or patterns or repeatable templates and things like that is not very difficult. And these patterns, this could be a wall panel, on a bigger scale, but they're real small right now for the cutting, the rolling pin. This could be, like I said, the bottom of a tray. This could be the top of a jewelry box. It could be the sides of a jewelry box. It could be a picture frame. It could be any kind of thing that you want. It could be a background, kind of a background, almost background texture in your carving, V carving or whatever, where you have this background pattern and then you cut out like those script letters and you glue them to it, to create like live, laugh, love, or, something like that with this nice, cool pattern behind it. Things like that. Get the wheels rolling and be creative, right? Whoop, whoop. The genius is landing. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Just joining. Thanks, Laney. Hey, Tim. How you doing, bud? Top-notch class, as usual. Thanks. Thanks, Jim. All right, this is trimming. What it's doing is it's looking at all these vectors, figuring out how it needs to redraw them to trim all the edges and close them off as well. And you ever seen those YouTube videos where they're like, here's this check that I got and all this good stuff and everything? I get these fake checks from car dealerships or from loan companies and all. And it looks like a check. It says paid to the order of, and then has this big old dollar amount, and I'm like, whoop whoop, somebody sent me a check, and it's fake. It's like you qualify for this much off a new car. It's like, man, come on. All right, so now we got this pattern and everything. We don't need the border anymore, so I can go ahead and remove that. There's our pattern there. Now let's look at let's come in here and create another V-carve toolpath, and then we're going to move on off of cutting boards real quick and talk about the one very simple that I thought was pretty cool chalkboard cutting board looking thing. Let's come in here on this pattern. Now, V-carve toolpath is going to be cutting between the lines, skipping a line, cutting between the lines, skipping a line, right? And everything. So I may want to put a border on here to carve this. I will know in 2 and 2 when I find out exactly how this is going to look. So same tools, 60-degree V-bit and 16th inch end mill. I'm going to calculate this tool path. All right, there are 2 open vectors that were identified. They're going to get ignored. I'll find out what those are in just a second. I think they're going to be a little trimmed piece of trash somewhere. Let's reset this preview and unwrap this part, and let's look at what's getting cut off here. So in here, we have our edges, our circles getting cut, and I don't know. Let's preview that. Let's preview that and see what's going on with that. Yeah, that's the pattern. That's the pattern I want. All right, let's. This one looks weird in my low resolution. Let's turn up the resolution just a little bit. And I think, hold on, let me see here. Let me go back to this. Preview that visible toolpath. Oh, you son of a gun. Let me preview that one more time. I think I want it reversed. I got to think about how the cookie gets cut. I want the flowers raised on the cookie, and this would indent them in. I want the flowers raised, and I want this raised. So yes, I need to reverse the entire cut. I need to reverse the entire cut. And so that means I do need to put a boundary around it. Let's undo the delete of the boundary I had there, because I can use that. I can utilize that. And I'm going to take that boundary and I'm going to bring it out just a little bit. Hold that shift key down and I'm going to bring it out away from that pattern just a little bit, right? Just so the lines aren't overlapping and stuff. Same thing this time on the top and bottom. I'm going to bring it out just a little bit. Not a whole lot. Just a little bit. I mean, just a scotch. Okay, let's recreate that toolpath. All right, 2 open vectors. Let me find those open vectors. Let me find those open vectors first. Select. Right click. Oh, come on now, stop. Right click. Select all open vectors right here. Okay, I have this open vector right here. So let's find out. Let's go to the join tool. There are 6 open vectors selected in that little pattern right there. 2 will get closed, 2 will still be open from what I have selected here. So 2, 4, 6. So I'm going to select that again and let's come in here. That's closed. That's good. That's closed. Let's right click and select all open vectors. Zoom selected. I just told the software to select all the open vectors. Now I want to zoom in to the selected, and that's those 2 right there. That's good. But I should have none left in this design. It should have been just those 2 profiles. Let's go in here. Calculate. So you tell it to select the open vectors, and if you can't see them, go to the top magnifying glass with the pink dotted line and tell it to zoom in to the selected item, because you just told it to select that item, so then it'll zoom right into what it selected. All right, let's reset this preview and preview that visible toolpath. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Junior. So we're gonna get nice emboss little dimples with a little boop sticking up out of it. These areas here are going to be pressed down, and we're going to have a little raised up area around the flower, and then the flower is going to be raised and the center is going to be down. That's the pattern that I want on the rolling pin. So if we look at that with our 3D rough and our 3D finish, preview visible toolpaths, we can move on. So hopefully you got you're getting the idea of things and all. But Christmas trees, pumpkins, you know, weird little things, you know, for Halloween coming up. You know, you can be Halloween cookies. And if you're looking for, if you're thinking, hey, well, I want to, maybe I could carve a 3D model and something like that, and you're looking for some good 3D models, I have a Halloween package that we're putting together of 3D models for you. And I will, when that package is available, I'll show it to you in the next class. And you can buy the models individually. There's going to be some cool ones. Or you can buy them as a little 10-pack. All right, that's going to go out. While that is rocking itself through, do y'all have any questions? Oh, Tim, thanks. I appreciate that. Tim says it's the best part of his day since he found Spindle TV and all you fine folks that he gets to talk with in the chat area. Paul, I know subtitles. Are the subtitles on? You said gotta love subtitles. Are the subtitles on? Because I keep getting comments that they're not on. Do you get subtitles? Because of my country accent. My southern accent is hard to understand for a lot of people in my English. But, Paul, is that... who said that? Who said that about subtitles? Where was it? I just saw it. Gotta love subtitles. Paul Coffey, if you're still watching the video, are you able to see subtitles? Or are you being kind of, or was that a facetious comment because you wish you could see subtitles? Let me know. Let me know. Okay, so if we wrap this up, because I click a button to turn on subtitles when I'm doing the recordings, but I've had so many comments saying, please turn on subtitles, please turn on subtitles, please turn on subtitles. And I'm like, they're on. All right, let's come in here and take a look. All right, let it regenerate. So we have this cool embossed, let it regenerate again. We have this cool embossed pin where these octagons are going to be raised up. So that means think of it, they're getting pressed into the dough. So that octagon shape is going to be recessed. But in that recess, we're going to have this nice inner border that's going to be raised up. And then this nice floral pattern that'll be raised up as well. It's going to look really, really cool. Really, really cool. Now, just as an example of what this would look like if it was the cookie dough getting carved, I'm going to take this right here, and I'm going to create a model really quickly. We're going to go with a kind of I did it as a V carve. So it's going to have a chamfered wall, 60 degrees or 30? 60 degrees. Might be 30. And it's going to have a base height of 1/16 of an inch. 0.0625. 0.625. And it's going to be limited to its height. I want it flattened off at 0.3125. 0.3125. All right, let's click apply to create that model. That's backwards. Hold on, I think I need the rectangle on that one as well too. Let me turn off this. Let me go into the 3D view. 3D view. Oh, unwrap. Lord have mercy. Yeah, that's backwards. Hold on. Let's do that again one more time. Delete. Go back into that shape tool and select everything with the boundary this time. I'm trying to give you kind of a three-dimensional view of what that cookie might look like. Let's apply that. Let's see what we got here. Oh, yes. Yeah, you can in Zoom. Hi, Lainey. Can this be done with a DWC laser? Thanks, Dave Garvey. Yeah, you can use the DWC laser on this for sure. All right. So this is kind of, imagine, here, let's do this. Let's put some meat behind it. Let's start a new component. Let's grab just the rectangle and create a flat 1/16 of an inch base. Apply. Okay. So imagine a cookie, right? You know, your cookies, your pastries, or your top, but it would have this kind of design, and that's a little deep. It's not, here, let me do that again. 03125. There we go. So it would have this kind of pattern. So you'd have a little circle with these little dimples. you'd have this kind of grid on your dough, on the top of your dough, and then it would be kind of recessed down, this little area sticking up, and then the flour and everything. So that's what that rolling pin would stamp. That's actually, if you did the rolling pin, that's what the dough would stamp out to look like, right? So a sheet of pastry that looks like that. And then you can do your, you can do your little cookies. You can cut your cookies out and stuff. All your little circles for your cookies, and they would have this kind of pattern in them. Fun stuff. Okay. Yes, Dave Garber, it can be done on a laser, with a laser. As I showed earlier, here is an image of kind of a rolling pin with a laser engraving in it, right, to create that kind of cool embossed design. And make sure your pattern has some kind of pattern to it, right? Birds, flowers, and all, but they, every, bird, flower, leaf, those birds, there's kind of a synchronicity in some case or another, or randomize it, whatever you want to do. It's totally up to you, man. It's totally up to you. All right, let's see here. I see subtitles, but it doesn't necessarily translate accurate. Thanks. Sorry. Center point has become center point. Yeah. Google Translate. Thanks, Paul, for letting me know that. I'm getting them, and they do pop up some weird take on your enunciation. Yes, I got to start talking clearly for the Google translation to properly. Sometimes, like for instance, when Burl Tishner, the owner of Digital Woodcarver, when I do like Google Voice when I'm texting and all, I'm like, hey Burl, can you give me a call? It always comes out, hey bro, can you give me a call? And I don't pay attention. I hit send, and all of a sudden I'm calling my boss bro. Hey bro, give me a call. And then I have to write back, Burl, not bro. So, yeah, I got to learn to start speaking slowly and clearly. I'll do my best. We're just trying to get through some things. All right, so fun with patterns. They don't necessarily have to be on rolling pins. They could be, like I said, they could be all kinds of things, backgrounds and this and that. But, fun with patterns and geometrical shapes. Think outside the box a little bit with, what you're wanting to do. Let's come in here and turn on pattern A and turn off layer 1. Fun geometrical shapes and stuff. All kinds of neat things. It could be just flourishes and flowers, and it could be 3D models, little grapevines, but pumpkins and Halloween stuff and Christmas trees and lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, all kinds of fun things there. Now, I want to take a minute and I want to lay out in your mind a design for a little cutting board kind of chalkboard that would hang on a wall. This would be strictly for wall decor, and in your home or something, like in your kitchen and stuff. So we're going to start off with a very quick rectangle. Oh, hold on. Make sure you're in let's turn that layer off. Add a new layer. Make sure you're in a proper layer. Okay. Now on this rectangle, I'm going to size it up a little bit more because we're going to size it up. About like that. I want to do some radiuses. I think I'm going to go with like a 3/4 inch radius. Let's see what that looks like. There, 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 and there. Nice, not bad. All right, let's grab another rectangle. Let's get that centered up and down. First of all, we'll make the big one centered up and down. Make sure it's there. It is. Take this one and center that one up and down as well. Let's grab a circle. We'll get everything sized appropriately in just a moment. Let's move that over here. Get on the board there. Let's Move this in a little. All right, I'm going to take this circle and I'm going to hold down the Control and the Shift key to keep it centered on itself. And let's do that one more time. Grab it right in the corner, Control Shift, and centered on itself. There we go. Now, before I do any trimming to connect all these together, I want to kind of shape this a little bit sexier. So I'm going to go into node editing mode. I'm going to grab this guy and I'm going to use my arrow keys. I'm going to pull this up. You know, when you are moving, I'm just going to count how many clicks I'm doing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Do the same thing here on this one. Down arrow key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm going to use my, change this to a Bezier curve. This one too. And I want to pull this in a little bit. Pull this in a little bit. To the center line there. To the center line there. Get that even. I want this to kind of round about there. I'm going to pull this into alignment with this here. And like I said earlier on, we can cut things in half and mirror them, right, to create it symmetrical. But I believe I nailed it. I don't know. We'll find out. Now I'm going to take my scissors and let's trim. Okay. We made a little cutting board with a handle. Right? Very quick and simple, right? Let's go in and align this to the center of the material. Oh. Okay. Now, I'm going to create another rectangle here on the inside. About like that. And let's get that centered inside of this. I want to center it inside of this. So I can't center it to the center of the board because, you know, it's going to, you know, rock off and everything. So I can, you know, I don't really have a snapping point unless I look at this and I go into here. There's a snapping point way up here, but on this lower part of the rectangle here, there's not really a snapping point. Now that's showing a center mark right here, and it might still be reading the center mark off of my old rectangle. Let's find out. Okay, so if I come in here and match this up. Bear with me. This is just a test for a second, guys. We're going to go, and girls, we're going to size this up and snap it right to that line there. Snap it right to that line there. Snap it right to this line here, and one more down here. Now, the center point of that rectangle is right here. Okay, let's put a guideline there just for reference. Come on, give me a guideline. Okay, and let's put one down this way just for reference. Okie dokie. All right, so that rectangle missed the whole center point by a mile. Hold on there. Let's put this back over. Right there. Okay. Let's get rid of this one. All right, so this rectangle, it's showing the center point for this rectangle that I just drew to be right there. Now, get rid of that. Okay. And if I come in with this rectangle, grab it in the center, it's saying that there's a center point right here. Okay. Now, is it snapping that center point now just because I have a guideline? No. If I remove those guidelines and I come back and I snap right to, where'd you go? Where'd you go? There you go. Right to, that's not it. Come on now. Don't make me out to be a liar, man. That's that center point. There we go. Right there. So that point right there, okay, let's turn on the guideline and see if it's the same point. Oh, it is. So what it was doing is it was actually, the software actually remembered that rectangle, is a rectangle. Even though it has that handle attached to it now, it still remembered the center point of those vectors. That's pretty cool. I didn't think it would do that. But it actually did recall that. And I was wondering, wow, how did I snap to the center of that so well? And it's because it remembered it was a rectangle before and it remembered that snapping point. So good on Vectric for that. Okay, so very cool here. We're going to go with a pocket cut. This pocket cut's going to be somewhat shallow, not very deep. We're going to go, let's go 0.1, let's go 1/8 of an inch. That's not deep. So we are going 1/8 of an inch, okay, which is 3.175 millimeters for anyone working in millimeters. Let's reset this preview. Now, on the cutting board, this could be like, it doesn't have to be 3/4 of an inch. It could be, a 1/2 inch thick or something like that, and all. But let's pretend that this is a 3/4 inch board, which is not right. But we're going to do the pocket cut. Let's preview that. Preview that visible toolpath. Okay. Okay. Now let's cut out the part. So we're going to select this and this, and let's do a profile cut. Profile cut. I'm going to go 1.25 and calculate that. Preview that. Let's see if it goes all the way through. I hope it does. Hope it does. Hope it does. Perfect. All right, let's get rid of the waste. Okay. Now, imagine this being just a thin cutting board. This is wall decor, right? So it doesn't need to be real thick. Okay, so let's 1/2 inch, 3/4 at the most. Maybe even 3/8. 3/8 1/2 inch. Nice little 1/8 inch pocket here. Now, inside this pocket, we're going to use chalk paint. Okay, so we're going to prime the material first. And then we're going to apply about 2 to 3 coats of chalk paint. And you can pick that up at your local big box store. Let that chalk paint cure thoroughly. Give it a good couple of days. And then take the piece of chalk, and we need to prime that chalkboard and all, but take a piece of chalk, and on its side, you're going to want to prime that board by literally marking up all that chalk paint and everything with the side of the chalk, not the ends, the side. And that's going to prime that. So if you've ever been on a chalkboard where you write something, you erase it, and then the letters and all are still there, you can see what you erased, it doesn't go away. That's because the chalkboard wasn't primed properly as far as with the chalk. So we're going to prime it, let that sit for a few minutes, and then we're going to wipe it off, with a rag and all. And if you're going to use a damp rag, then make sure that you let that chalkboard paint sit for a good couple of days before you prime it and all that stuff with the chalk. Now you can write on it. It's primed. The chalkboard is ready. It's primed. It's ready to go. You should do this with every chalkboard you have, by the way. Prime it. But now you have a chalkboard, and you got this cool little wall hanging piece, and when I was watching this, I was watching Gordon Ramsay, and they just redid this restaurant, and the restaurant's name was Manja Manja. Well, they had these 2 little chalkboards, or 2 little cutting boards, and they were hanging on the wall on this kind of Italian decor, but they had 2 little cutting boards hanging at a little diagonal, kind of side to side, and one said Manja, and it had a little cool little curly Q and stuff on it. The other one said Manja, so Manja Manja, the restaurant name, right? But I really liked that. I thought, oh my God, those are so easy to make. So fun and so easy to make. So something that could really sell very well. These cool little kitchen accessories, these wall hanging art that could be for notes, little grocery lists, or little reminders. It could be just for fun stuff, I love you messages and all on the chalkboard, whatever it wants to be. Or it could be, the Petersons, Grandma's kitchen, you know, with some little decorative little kind of chalk art and all. I wish I had the picture to show you, but it looked really good. And I thought, man, that is super simple to make, you know, and very creative and very fun to do. So, yeah, very fun, very to do. And they just hang on a wall, little chalkboards, shape of a little cutting board, Grandma's kitchen, you know, I love you, make me a sandwich, whatever, I don't know, whatever, you know, that kind of thing. But fun stuff. So prime your, you know, after you carve your pocket and everything, use a primer, prime that pocket area, then use a chalkboard paint. You want a good couple of coats on it, and then let that chalkboard paint dry, cure thoroughly, and then take a piece of chalk, white chalk, on the side and rub it all on that chalkboard paint. Let that sit for about, I don't know, give it, you know, about 15 or 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then come back and you can erase that. And then everything you write on there now, when you erase, it'll go away like it's supposed to. Because the chalkboard is properly primed. If you are going to use a wet rag or a wet damp cloth to erase that, you know, the priming that you did, then let that chalkboard paint sit, like I said, for a couple of days, right? Okay. But your brand new black shiny chalk paint is going to have kind of a you know, a used chalkboard kind of look to it. It's going to be kind of like a little bit slightly duller black, you know, and everything once it's primed with that chalk. But it's going to be so much better for when you're writing messages on it and you erase those messages, that the ghost of those messages don't stay there, you know, kind of thing. So fun stuff. But I thought that would be a fun little project for you guys that you could do. And it's cool. It's something that, I mean, if you go with thread material, they don't need to be really thick or anything, you know. And they could be different sizes. They could be different shapes. This is kind of the shape that I saw that I liked. But they could sell very inexpensively, but they could sell, you know, or they could sell expensively. I mean, you could, you know, I don't know, depending on the type of wood you use, right? For me, I would probably use a darker wood like a walnut or a cherry or something. I'd like a darker wood so it has that kind of contrast. Or it could be a mixture of woods, you know. Just fun stuff. I thought that was cool, so I wanted to share that with you. Very simple to make, very easy to, you know, kind of lay out. Just give it that kind of, not pizza tray, but that kind of cutting board handle with a handle look, and have some fun with it. Kitchen decor. Okay. So in tonight's class, we talked about doing some patterns. We talked about using the array copy tool to do that array. You saw kind of some quick ways of like drawing lines to find center points very easily between two objects. You know, creating profiles and 2-rail sweeps for rolling pins. Creating patterns for those rolling pins, you know, to create all kinds of stuff. And those patterns could really, they don't necessarily have to be, you know, they could be for anything. You know, you can think about wall art. You can think about the bottoms of trays, tops of boxes, sides, and all that stuff. And we did a little bit of node editing, scissor trimming, using our trim clear outside of a boundary, you know, to clear away those patterns and stuff. So hopefully in some of this class tonight, because we're going to end it here, hopefully you were able to pick up something that might have been useful for you and everything. But yeah, man, I'm excited about the little, more so than anything, I'm more excited about the little cutting board chalkboards. But hopefully you picked something up and enjoyed spending this 2 hours and 13 minutes with us. We're going to call it a night after 2 hours and 15 minutes, so I got 2 minutes to say my goodbyes. Next week, I am going to show off some models that we have that are going to become available for purchase and download for Halloween projects. We're going to have some Christmas packs coming out as well, too. And then we're going to have, you know, just general stuff as well. I'll be announcing that and showing those off next week. For Kool-Aid, if you're still in there, I'll see about getting a little Excel spreadsheet to show you how the calculation would work on calibrating your Z-axis motor for a full revolution on the size, diameter, material that you're using. Remember, if you are going to do the cutting board designs, if your cutting board runs along your Y-axis, rotate everything that I said 90 degrees, okay?
just rotate everything 90 degrees for you, so it will carve and correctly if your x-axis revolves around your y on your particular machine. Other than that, I really hope you enjoyed some things. We do have some great announcements coming up about the new website and stuff. It's still in the works, but I'm so excited. I'm like biting at the bit to get that website up, where there's going to be blogs and articles. I'll get to start now doing my full builds on one video channel while I do the trainings videos here. And it's all underway. I wish it would come together much quicker, but the marketing guys and myself are working on it very rapidly, but it is taking some time. I appreciate each and every one of you. I do not know what we are at right now, but if you like this video, thumbs up. Please give me a thumbs up. I believe we are well over 7,000 subscribers. We might be just at it. But man, hey, I didn't say thank you at 3,000, at 1,000, at 100. I didn't say thank you all this time. So for all of you that are watching and subscribed to the channel, thank you. I really appreciate you. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe, because we do live classes every Tuesday night. Some projects might be interesting, some might be boring or not fitting for you, but they're still going to be there. All right, bye, everybody. Until next time, y'all have a great day. I'll see you later.